where has TikTok come from, and why has it become just so huge? I mean, Chris, you've literally written the book on TikTok. Can I start with you? Where did it come from, TikTok? Was it something that had been on the horizon for some time, or did it come out of left field a little bit?
It depends on who you ask and how far back you want to go in the kind of weird paleontology of TikTok. So really briefly, TikTok kind of has its origins in two different apps. One is based in China, which is called Douyin, which has been around since sort of the mid 2010s essentially. And that's developed by a company called ByteDance, who currently own TikTok as well as a lot of other apps. But then people may have heard of the predecessor app of TikTok, which is called Musical.ly in the West, which merged with TikTok kind of 2017, 2018. ByteDance basically bought the parent company of that. And so there is this kind of complicated lineage of the app itself. But in terms of short form video, we've been doing that for a long, long time. Some people may have used Vine if you are old enough. I mean, I don't think Sophia is even old enough to have done that because she's sadly far, far younger than I am. And everybody else probably here, there's a lot of students here who won't ever have heard of that. But short form video has existed in a long sort of stretch of time. And the idea of, I guess, memified videos where you take an idea or a topic or a joke and you kind of make a copy of it and that goes viral has existed for quite a while. Where TikTok is different is they've thrown a lot of money at it. First of all, ByteDance is a huge, massive company that is spending vast sums, including on a live streaming promotion next week in the UK. So if you're one of those lucky people who has more than 20,000 followers in the UK, you're over 18 and you're able to go live, you can make 600 quid next week just by going live every day for 2 hours. They'll give you that money. They're willing to throw it at you. But then also they're very canny in terms of advertising. They've hit at the right time. COVID is a result of them being so powerful. And they've made it far easier to create content, which is something that I know Laura is able to talk about and really fascinating in terms of how she does a lot of stuff and shows you how actually the simplification of the app is the big deal here.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, Laura and Sophia, have you any thoughts about, just why it's become so wildly popular? I mean, Chris has just alluded to, good timing, but also some of the functionality as well. Is there some reason that it just has chimed with social media users in a way that other social media platforms, haven't done, or maybe have done that in a different way? Laura.
Oh, cool. I was going to say so TikTok is fascinating for lots of different reasons, but I saw a quote by someone who went on TikTok for the first time and wrote a chronicle of it. They did a little bit of gonzo journalism of their experience. And one of the things that this person points out is that TikTok has the passivity of watching television, where you don't have to choose what you watch, but the personalization of all the other spaces that we're used to. So because that landing page is very different to a lot of the other social platforms that we are on, I genuinely do think that part of its success is COVID, like Chris was saying, hit at the right time while we all had nothing to do except stare at our phones. It comes as part of an evolution of visual languages that we had already been trying out through Vine or Insta stories or different things. But then added on to that, it came upon a time when it can be really tiring choosing what you want all the time, right? You have to choose what you watch on Netflix. You have to choose what you watch on different platforms. It's all, the personalization comes at a cost. And TikTok kind of found that sweet spot, kind of like Goldilocks way of giving you a little bit of that passive, I will just give you stuff, but also it's tailored to what you like without having to have much effort. And I don't know about you guys, but I can very easily spend an hour on TikTok and then turn around and go, oh my God, it's 3 a.m. What have I been doing with my life? Also, I loved it. And that was great. And I'm sure for you, Sophia, because you're the creator in this room, you kind of lived the side of being a content creator and getting an audience and building an audience. That must be kind of really different as well.
I would add that Yes, I was tragically slightly after Vine's time. So had I been slightly older, I might have gone on there, but obviously I would have gone on there as a child. I wouldn't have gone on there as a trained journalist. So I really am coming to TikTok, a trained video journalist as well. So I'm coming to TikTok with a different perspective than I would have to Vine. You've both described it perfectly. All I would add is in-app editing on TikTok has revolutionized content creation in that it's starting to change the visual grammar of video that we're seeing, and it's becoming far more accessible for your everyday person to become a content creator. Whereas what we're seeing now on YouTube, we're seeing a very high production value a lot of the time. And even when there isn't high production value visibly, and by that I mean, you know, a nice camera has been used, a nice plush backdrop, the person still probably knows how to edit pretty well. They will have access to video editing software that they've probably paid for. All of these things take resources. With TikTok, you just need the app, and that's it. So I think video editing, people have become creators because of TikTok, and they're going to other platforms to spread their creation empire. So it's quite popular now, for example, to see TikTokers becoming YouTubers when they weren't YouTubers to start off with. So I found that very interesting.
Yeah. Chris, did you want to come back on something there, did you?
Yeah, well, it's just Sophia's kind of hit on exactly what it is about TikTok that makes it so interesting in terms of sort of relatively long history now of social media. If you look at it, like YouTube is 15 years old, and you used to have this idea of a consumer of content on social media and a producer of content on social media. You used to have creators and audiences, whereas TikTok now, because of that ease of actually creating stuff, they have like a ridiculously high proportion. I don't have the exact number, but I do have a slide that I'm not meant to, a slide deck from somewhere that I've got somewhere that does say how many people, what proportion of TikTok's users are actually creating content at the same time. And you see in terms of even the impact on the user base. So it used to be very, very young. And in the last year or so, we've really seen TikTok aging up in its user base because of the ease of production. So you had very social media savvy teenagers who would create funny videos at the start of this era, and then you had them starting to do that in front of their parents, and they would run parents to do one of the challenges, and then suddenly their parents go, well, what is this? And they have a go, and they get hooked in through the algorithm, and then they also realize it's not that difficult to produce content. You know, fuddy-duddies like us, Ian, can produce content on TikTok if we want.
I'm not going to rise to that, Chris. Laura, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, all of this is 100% correct. And if you haven't gone to the creating part of TikTok, like the tools are insane. It does some really mad AI editing where you don't even have to think about the timing of your video. It times it to music, you have filters, but also the app isn't greedy. TikTok and how it's built is very happy for you to then go and spend time outside of TikTok. And one of the things that had to happen in the beginning, I don't know if you guys noticed, when you see a TikTok video, it has a watermark of the user and it has the handle, right? And it used to be at the top and the bottom side of the video. But then people started resharing those into Instagram. And then what TikTok did was move those handles to the middle. So they're even recognizing that their content is going to be shared in square, and then it might be cropped out, but they still want you to know this originally started on TikTok. They are not greedy at all. And that is also part of the business model and how it works and how easy it is to share stuff from within or outside on other platforms on TikTok. And that has made it go wild. Even if you're not on TikTok, you will have seen TikTok somewhere. And that's part of the power of how the app is built.
Fantastic. So, TikTok's here. It's got lots of functionality. We love it. It's it's fun. But why should journalists in particular, ride this particular app, as it were? Because we've seen platforms come and go. We've seen apps come and go. Why? What makes us think that journalists should really sit up, take notice, and and actually go with this one? you know, rather than maybe just say, nah, I'm going to sit this one out. I'll wait for them, you know, whatever else is coming down the line. Sophia, can I come to you on that? I mean, what makes you know, TikTok important to journalists, do you think?
I can say now, from being on there over a year, I can also really clearly see the reasons that a journalist may not wish to go on TikTok. And by that, I'm thinking the amount of time that is needed to get an understanding of how trends work and replicating those trends, the memification of video that Chris mentioned earlier. You need to spend time consuming on the app. So you have to factor that consumption in to content creation as well. And once you start bringing all of that in, that can be numerous hours a day. So obviously not everyone can do that. The only reason I can do that is because I choose to use my lunch breaks and evening hours in that fashion. I don't have dependents to care for in my spare time. I can do that. I'm at the stage in my life where I can. However, if you have the time and if you have the patience and you have a strong enough self-esteem so that if you put a TikTok up and it completely tanks, you aren't completely defeated and think, oh no, no one likes me. I'm never gonna TikTok again. Oh, can you hear that? The thunder. Oh my goodness, that was scary. So you can, if you have the wherewithal to get through all of that, then it can pay dividends to generally have a bigger social media presence, full stop. Increasingly, I have to say that TikTok and Instagram are working together in tandem for me because of messaging on TikTok. So messaging, I can only message someone and they can only message me really if we follow each other. And that's a privacy sort of protection that's factored into the app. Whereas Instagram, I have message requests that build up and I get sent so many a day from people who found me on TikTok, but they know they can't message me. So they head over to my Instagram to message me. So that's how increasingly they're working together. But in terms of creating content, the reason that I still spend as much time on there as I did this time last year is because it's putting my journalism in front of more eyeballs than any other app is at the moment. And although the age is, like Chris mentioned, it is changing, the demographics are getting older, I am still primarily reaching people who are about 18 to 24 years old and who are girls. That's really fantastic for my BBC journalism, where I am expected in my role to target younger audiences. But it's also great for a book that I have coming out in which that will also be like a primary target audience for them. I've always been taught in my role at the World Service to be like really audience centric, and I'm super grateful for that. And it's only helped me with TikTok, to be honest.
Thank you.
Chris, that audience thing is really important, and I think it's we know, Ian, from colleagues and friends that we have at the BBC, this idea of replenishers for the BBC, the importance of getting people who, to be blunt, are going to die at some point, getting people to replace them as consuming content. So the reason why you should be on TikTok is because it's something like 18% of its user base are under the age of 18 in the UK. There are 17 million people logging onto TikTok every single month in the UK. So 1 in 4 adults are on there. 732 million people worldwide use it every single week. So that, and they're often people who don't consume news in other traditional means. You look at the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism reports about where people are consuming news. It's less and less traditional means. It's more social media, and social media increasingly means TikTok.
Yeah, and just quickly to add to that, if you are not thinking I have the time or like the mental fortitude to be a creator and expose yourself to all of the dangers that comes with that and having to spend that time, I would still argue that as journalists, our job is to tell people stories. And we need to know the spaces where people are telling these stories. And that means whether it's TikTok or whatever comes after it, we should at least understand these spaces enough to be able to navigate the trends or the conversations, to find stories that maybe we're missing because we're not looking in the right place. Think of it like if you're at a party and then there's these other breakout rooms where people are going to have conversations. If you don't walk into the room, you're never going to know what conversations are happening, and we might be missing big parts of the story. As happy as this app markets itself as, there is so much content on there that is newsworthy because it borders that line between culture and politics. And if it's where our audiences are going, it's kind of where we have to learn how to navigate this space. And whether you become a content creator or not is a completely different thing, but understanding the space enough to navigate it, it's hugely important, because TikTok or Facebook groups or Reddit boards, they're becoming the new frontier where our digital communities converge. And just like we go to village fetes and to town councils, we need to understand the digital spaces that are starting to either replace or complement the ways our communities connect with each other.
And panelists, I mean, are we confident that, because Sophia talked about the time we might need to devote to investing in learning how to use TikTok, and are we confident that TikTok will still be here in another couple of years? It won't have been superseded by something else. It won't have been Facebook won't have swallowed it up, or taken on some of that functionality, or Twitter or Instagram, whatever. I mean, are we confident that TikTok is here to stay? Chris, what do you think?
Yes. Next. No. Let me take you back to February 2019. So in February 2019, there was this event called VidCon for the first time in London, and this is a really big social media event. It's an online video conference. Had previously been in the US for many, many years, more than a decade, but this was the first time it was in the UK, held at the ExCeL, which is now one of the Nightingale hospitals in London. And there was this panel for TikTok that had this really unusual mix of audiences. So everywhere else in the conference, it was kind of older people who were all wearing suits and ties and things like that on this particular day, because it was an industry day. But there was this one TikTok panel, and when I went and saw that, it was full of younger people. And I kind of thought, oh, TikTok might be a thing then, and pitched the idea for the book and started writing about it for different publications. But my publisher at the time said, actually, don't think that there'll be mileage in a TikTok book. Not sure it'll be around asking those exact same questions. And then fast forward, 2 years on, I kind of revisited the idea with them, and they go, oh yeah, actually, no, it is maybe a big deal now. Like, if TikTok can survive, and this is something that we haven't even touched on, if TikTok can survive kind of being attempted to be driven out of business by the world's most powerful person in the issue that it had with Donald Trump last year, then I think that it can absolutely survive and thrive in the long run, not least because of just the sheer amount of money that is behind it. Like, people often overlook this. They think that TikTok is this kind of little scrappy company and app that could. ByteDance is kind of like a Google or a Facebook or an Apple. It is a huge company which spans the globe and has lots of different fingers and lots of different pies. So it's not going anywhere. I think there is this idea that everything social media is flash in the pan, but this has been around for quite a while now, and I think it's going to stay.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm convinced, Chris. Well, we've already touched on some of the strengths and the features of TikTok that make it unique. But let's just think about, how can journalists play to those specific strengths? Sophia, I mean, can you just, talk us through, some of the ways that you and other journalists are using the strengths of TikTok to tell stories in a particular way?
It's dual, my strategy really, which is telling stories, but also making videos that will accrue an audience who will then be there for when I bring them stories. So I'm sure, I don't know, if you went back and actually collated like all of my TikToks, loads of them on anything to do with journalism, the minority are to do with journalism, and I don't really know what the future holds with it, but I've done so many videos about languages, like language learning, languages, and just interesting facts or stories, because there is a really ready audience for that on TikTok. And I know it will get a lot of eyeballs, and then it means that when I do create content that's to do with journalism I've done, or is a kind of call out where I want to talk to people because I'm working on a certain kind of story, and it's a way for me to find case studies, I'll make content like that. And it at least guarantees me that it won't be seen by 100 people, it will be seen by hopefully at least say 10,000. That's very different to say what would happen if I put the same video, to take an example, on Twitter. Typically, if I post a video to Twitter, I'd be lucky if it hit 1,000 or 2,000 views. So I'm already getting a lot more people finding me on the For You page, because it's not predicated on a social graph of who we follow. It's predicated on success of the content. If anything, there is something often very meritocratic about how TikTok videos work. If it's good content, doesn't matter if you have 0 followers or 1 million, it will get to people. So it's a little bit of that. And I have deliberately looked at successful TikTokers who are not in the journalism space, and I've imitated them, or I've taken what they've done and I've adapted it to my niche. So I remember when I was I made a documentary last year about how TikTok was being used ahead of the US election. And that was the first time that I did a kind of spoken word poem of a story that I'd done. And that got over 100,000 views. And crucially, it got to young Americans. That's all I really wanted. I was like,
hang on a minute, Sophia, just let me just rewind. A poem, you hang on, you did a news story, but it was a poem. Just talk us through that.
Yeah. I don't know what to say other than I took my what I'd found, and I just wrote a poem out of it, and I did it to a beat. So a lot of well-known TikTokers in this space will not only do a poem, but they'll do something on a desk, or maybe with a cup, like in Pitch Perfect. And that's all about grabbing some eyeballs, grabbing the attention of someone, so something that is thumb-stoppingly good. It will stop the thumb from ruthlessly scrolling past your content. And that went down really well. And it doesn't always do huge numbers, but it will never do appalling numbers, that kind of format for me. Obviously, it takes a lot of creativity, because I have to write a whole poem and deliver it. The most famous example that I've done was the Suez Canal sea shanty. That is still the best performing content that I've ever made. And that's just because I saw that there was a news story that younger audiences were really interested in. There was a meme going around about how have we gone from sea shanties to the Suez Canal boat crisis, and I thought, oh, when two memes collide. And so that's how that came about. But equally, I'm having a lot of success with just holding my smartphone and delivering an explainer. And I use a crash zoom a lot. So that's when you're holding your phone, and you're holding the shooting sign, and then the filming button, and then you raise it. And as you raise it, it crash zooms. And that you do that because it keeps a pace going, which is really nice, and I like it. Certainly not usual house style that you will see in news delivery. But I do it because I saw TikTokers do it and go viral, so I did it. So in conclusion, I probably have taken my traditional broadcast training and thrown half of it out of the bag. However, half of it has been really important, because scripting to a minute-long video or less has been a skill that I've really needed. My experience as a video journalist has helped me script to front content with the most important information. So it's interesting where my traditional journalism training has helped me and where I've had to completely retrain. And obviously I've done all of that by myself, just watching content. I've just seen in the comments that someone has asked how many views the sea shanty got. On TikTok, I believe it's at 3.5. Oh, thanks, Chris. On Twitter, it did 1 million, and on Instagram Reels, it did maybe 1.4 million or 3, I can't remember. Interestingly, with Reels, content goes viral 5 days later, maybe, whereas on TikTok, it goes viral that same day. But yeah, so if you accumulate all the views that it got, including the fact that it got posted elsewhere, it got posted on meme accounts, it got me on the front page of Egypt's most read newspaper. It was crazy. The impact was crazy, and that went really well for me.
And sorry, Sophie, just one quick question from me before I throw it open to Laura and Chris. But you've talked about having to throw a lot of your formal training out the back. I mean, what does it do? In an organisation like the BBC, which has a lot of house style, a lot of rules about how this is how we do things. How does that apply to you when you're working on a new platform like TikTok? I mean, are you just given pretty much carte blanche to interpret, to adjust, to refashion the news the way you see it should work on TikTok?
Well, put it this way. Do you see journalists tweet like it's a news bulletin? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. The funniest tweets or the most impactful tweets often are not written in the style of a news bulletin. Often they will come from journalists that you follow because they've got a bit of personality. So what we're seeing on TikTok from, in the US, there are far many more versions of me. You've got people like Dave at Washington Post. And I know Max Foster is British, but he works for CNN. Bianca Granal, who's fantastic, and she's a journalist who's doing really incredible work. She's from Puerto Rico, who I really like. And I guess that's just how I TikTok. Obviously, even though I TikTok independently, the BBC News is not on TikTok. I am on there, like a couple of other BBC journalists are on there now. All I have to do is just do what I have to do on every other social media platform, which is abide by the social media guidelines. But other than that, my TikToks are mine.
Sure.
And as long as I just behave, it's okay.
Laura, did you want to add anything in terms of how as journalists, we can play to the strengths of TikTok?
Yeah, it's all about understanding the language and the etiquette of the platform. And it's what Sophia has described. You have to consume a lot of it to know how people are communicating in this space, and then finding trends or engaging ways that other people are using the app and adapting them to the kind of stories that you're trying to tell, whether it's a particular filter or a song, or like what Sophia did by merging 2 memes and referencing a previous TikTok, right? What I would say is that TikTok is a visual platform. It's visual, vertical, frame by frame storytelling with layers of AR added on top. And that format is being replicated in other spaces, right? Sophia just mentioned Reels. YouTube has something called Shorts, which kind of no one's really thinking about, but it's kind of there. Twitter is trying really hard to do fleets, even though, again, no one really cares. But it's kind of driving, this one platform is driving how we tell stories in a different way. And if you can tell a story in 60 seconds, which is all you get in TikTok, you are going to get really good at telling stories. Like the cinematographers and the filmmakers of the future are cutting their teeth on TikTok, 100%. If you can condense what you're trying to say and use all of the tools available to you, so you have your image, sound, effects, hashtags, AR filters, layers on top, it really makes you think and kind of almost inception the story that you're trying to tell, right? And to strip away all of that. I remember having to do that when I started to learn how to tweet, because I am that old, right? And thinking, oh, I don't have a whole para to tell my story. I have to do 140 characters, which is what we had before. And that was hard. And it's kind of that, but rethinking that for visual storytelling. And there's some really cool things that you can do, and it will future-proof your storytelling. Because if Chris is right, and TikTok's here for a long time, and even if Chris isn't right, and whatever else comes afterwards, it will build on the visual storytelling language that is being created and experimented and expanded on TikTok right now. So if you don't want a 15-year-old kid to take your job in 10 years, learn the space, learn how it works, and keep learning as the platforms change.
Okay, thank you for finishing with a nice threat there, Laura. Chris, was there anything you want to add on this? No. Okay, well let's, before we all rush off and buy shares in TikTok, let's just have a think though about some of the weaknesses, because it's not perfect as a platform. What are some of the things we need to be aware of before maybe we embark on investing that significant time in creating content for TikTok as journalists? Chris, what do we need to be aware of?
One of the main ones, I suppose, is this idea of there is still moderation / censorship. So I think Ellie was talking about, she put in the comments about kind of the tone and the level of things to put in, and she talked about thinking about language, but actually it's not even just about a sort of thinking about your career element, but it's actually thinking about the survival of the content on the platform question. So one of the hangovers of TikTok's origins in China is that it has quite a proactive approach to moderating content. So if you're thinking about doing anything around sex or anything around drugs or things like that, you may find that your videos are kind of flagged for either deletion or for kind of dialing back on the algorithm. So that's generally why for larger outlets, and unless you start to dig really deep into the algorithm and the content that's on there, like Laura's talked about, where you can find rich seams of story ideas, on the surface, unless you kind of manage to tap into that, a lot of stuff would have to be relatively sanitized and relatively user-friendly, kid-friendly, and things like that. Because you have to bear in mind that, this is a place for everyone. And so if you start to get a little bit controversial, TikTok has kind of proven in its recent past that it is very willing to intervene. The perfect example is in Russia right now. There's been a lot of coverage of anti-Putin TikTokers being censored, and TikTok basically following the rules of the road in Russia. They have an approach where they don't like to annoy the country in which they're operating, and so they may be more than some of the other social media platforms or apps are willing to hew to whatever the ruling government says in that given country, which could always be a big question in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and your ability to report on things in an unbiased way.
Thank you, Chris. Laura and Sophia, anything that bugs us just about the functionality of and the features within TikTok that maybe, just as storytellers, that just grates on us a little bit, or anything again we need to be aware of in terms of weaknesses? Sophia.
I just want to add and elaborate a bit on Chris's point about moderation. What is infuriating is that they, if your content is taken down, they finally are giving more information for why it was taken down, because they didn't always used to do that. And I think it's been pressure on the app that they now kind of qualify the reason for why they've taken your content down. However, back when I was doing the work on the US election, and I spoke to the head of safety at TikTok in the US, he said that essentially, if something is blatant misinformation, really outrageous disinformation, fake news, bad, they take it down, and they will tell you why they've taken it down. However, if it's fake news, but it is delivered more as an opinion rather than you blatantly stating something as fact, they can't take it down, because they can't take it down on the same guidelines. However, they do suppress it if they choose to do so. how do you as the user know that your content has been suppressed? You don't. It's all mystifying and happening behind your back. And unsurprisingly, across the app and across so many different groups, and especially marginalized groups that come to social media to have their voice heard, practically every single one of them, you will find activists in those communities saying that they're being suppressed on the app. And with a moderation policy like theirs, you know, you can't blame them for thinking that. If they are thinking that they are suppressed, whether it's true or not, it's really difficult to ascertain whether you're just your average user or whether you're a journalist trying to investigate and navigate what's quite going on the app. But certainly in the US election, everyone on every side of the political spectrum was saying that they were being suppressed by TikTok. And in the end, who knows who TikTok was suppressing?
So we wouldn't want our output to be restricted solely to TikTok, wouldn't we? I mean, TikTok has to be part of a broader social media policy. Would that be right, Laura?
Yeah, 100%. And to add on to all of the things that Chris and Sophia said about the challenges of the app, whether it's moderation for issues and political reasons, or whether it's specifically on the subject of breaching their community guidelines, the challenge for content moderation on TikTok is 4 times harder than on other platforms because you have more tools to tell your story. So for example, I've spent a lot of time looking at terrible disinformation around the coronavirus on TikTok. And the people who create this content realize very quickly that if they use the hashtags like COVID-19 or coronavirus, immediately their content gets flagged with a little like a little box at the bottom that says get the hard facts here. And also it made it really easy for the automated like content moderation bits at TikTok to pick it up and to look at it, right? So then the first step was, well, don't use the hashtags anymore, just create content about COVID and spread disinformation that way. Then they realized maybe also in the tags they use in the video, so they stopped using the tags. And the reason why it's easier to circumvent moderation in TikTok is that your cultural signifier, the symbol with which you use to communicate with people, can just be the song, right? And as long as the people in the group know what that song means, then you're still spreading that information and that idea, right? So it can be a dance, it can be a song, and that is really hard to moderate as a platform, because you wouldn't want to just cancel a song that a lot of people use for some really like innocent content just because some people are using it for a particular thing. So the challenge of moderating content on TikTok is harder than other platforms, and lack of transparency doesn't help. But I could say the same about other platforms. This isn't specific to TikTok, and it's really easy to make TikTok the baddie for what happened in politics last year and for its relationship with China, or part of its relationship with China. So I always kind of try and remind myself this problem and the things that I probably don't agree with about this platform are also probably true of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and other spaces, and it's not just TikTok.
Chris, you want to come in here?
Yeah, well, that's Laura's said it exactly, which is, as a journalist operating on social media of any type, whether it's TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, any of these things, we have this odd situation where these private platforms have become public spaces. And so as journalists, we go to these private platforms in order to reach the most people possible, because we know that they have become essentially public squares where people congregate. But with that, we forget that they are private platforms. We assume because everybody has access to them and everybody is there, that we have a God-given right to post whatever we want on there. Ultimately, these are private corporations, and there is a much bigger issue about this that we could probably have about another 4 hours of discussion on, in terms of whether or not social platforms and websites and things like this should be privatized or should be public. But you abide by the rules of those platforms. So if they decide they don't want your content on there, tough, there's not a lot you can do. So put your eggs in lots of baskets, and that's whether you are a journalist or you're just a general online content creator. We've seen that in YouTube with people joining Patreon and Twitter and TikTok and all of these different places, because they know that could be snatched away from them anytime soon.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Well, I'm conscious that we've got just 10 minutes left. our discussion, and I do want to leave time just to, because there's a ton of questions in the comments I want to get to. So just very briefly, Sophia and Laura and Chris, just some shout outs to, who should we be following on TikTok in the, particularly with, in relation to journalism, who's doing it well. I mean, Sophia's already mentioned some of them. Maybe if you want, just tell us who's doing it badly so that we can learn from that as well. And what's still to be done? What are we still waiting for someone to do on TikTok that will maybe be the tipping point for the platform in terms of how it's used by news organizations and journalists? Who wants to start with? Sorry, that was a mammoth question, wasn't it, really? But Laura's laughing. Come on, I'm going to start with you, Laura, then, because you dared to laugh at my question. So, Laura, some shout outs first of all to who do you like on TikTok?
Oh man, I mean, number one, your question is incredible but humongous. So if you don't follow Sophia already, do. She's amazing. Matt Foster from CNN is doing a really good job. Dave Jorgensen, who runs the Washington Post account, does an incredible job. The Washington Post are a great example of a legacy newspaper, very serious media publication, who realized that they just needed to figure out this space. So they gave a phone to a 20-something-year-old dude and said, just figure this out, just play with it until you know how it works. And they've done a really good job. I'm a really big fan of Planet Money, of what they're doing on Twitter as well. On TikTok, their podcast is amazing. If you don't know them yet, they're from NPR. And there's also a guy called Marcus Bosch who doesn't have a TikTok account, but he has a TikTok newsletter. He's German, so a lot of the trends that he picks up are very kind of Europe and MENA centric, but he picks up on really interesting things that at least are outside of my filter bubble because it comes from other languages and other parts of the world. And his newsletter is awesome. Highly recommend.
Nice, thank you, Laura. Chris, any more to add to that long list?
There's a guy who I think actually kind of bridges the gap between traditional journalism and a little bit of dipping his toe in kind of the medium while not going full on like meme lord. But he stopped posting relatively recently. He's a guy called Gully Burrows, who used to work for the Daily Mirror, who does kind of like, it's more clickbaity, soft soap, featurey type of content, but it is still interesting. And he seemed to be building up a bit of momentum, but I don't know what's happened. He hasn't posted since March. In terms of just like general follows, non-journalistically, there's a few people in who are listing on at the minute. So Alice Ophelia has an amazing newsletter called High Tea, which you should subscribe to, which is all about TikTok and internet culture in general. Eva Fogg Noah, who is in here as well, is doing amazing stuff in Denmark. So there are people who are analysing this and are looking at this and who are well worth following and listening to. And they're the sort of people that I tend to call on a lot in my reporting.
And Sophia, did you want to add any more? And also, I'm just wondering, I mean, are there any news organizations who are on there as brands, or is it really still and will remain individuals and personalities driven rather than brands?
That's a really interesting point. And I am still thinking about it. I am still wondering. And I don't even only think about this for my own employer. I think about, in the general internet world and the general media space and the future of it. Especially when Laura was saying the 15-year-olds of now are going to take all our jobs one day. Is it better for news organizations to have like official accounts that they put content out on? Or is there another way where they could be helping journalists have personal accounts and supporting them to create content in that way? And building attribution via familiar faces as opposed to a branded account. I imagine there is a reason no one has done that yet, a potent business reason why. But from my perspective, I can really see how if you trained a bunch of journalists to really hit, and I'm not speaking just TikTok, really hit all the main social media channels with content and how to go viral, whether that is a strategy anyone should be thinking about as well. And in myself, I haven't really even thought which it should be, but I think it's an interesting dilemma to consider when we think about the future of news and whether anyone, even my age, wants to read it. I really do have to say that amongst my friends, no one reads or watches the news. They will consume news in kind of roundabout ways that they don't quite realize they are consuming news. But I'm certainly the only one with a subscription to a newspaper. Unless it's on Netflix, they're not going to see it.
Well, that could be a discussion for a whole day, couldn't it, really, Sophia? But I mean, Chris, you want to add to that, did you?
Well, I think, yes, Sophia's kind of hit the nail on the head, which is that the main thing that we like social media for is that personalization, right? It's the parasocial relationship, the idea of seeing a face rather than a brand and having that personal connection with someone. It's why we turn to YouTube and TikTok rather than to TV or to newspapers nowadays. And so if you're going to have, and this gets to the kind of horrible marketing side of things, but if you're going to have like an institutional TikTok account or any institutional social media account, you need to have a particular voice and it needs to have a personality behind it. So there are some publications that lends itself to very well, but there is a reason why Dave Jorgensen is more popular than the Washington Post on TikTok, because Dave Jorgensen is like, I think he's a late night comedy show writer that ended up at the Washington Post, now runs their TikTok. Whereas the Washington Post has this austere, old-fashioned brand would find it very difficult to present themselves in a relatable way. So I think you have to be very careful about that. But then that, as you say, gets into kind of this idea of personality journalism, and do we really want to listen to Robert Besson giving a monologue for 10 minutes every night on the news, or do we actually want to read the news in a kind of easily digestible way?
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, let's get to some of these questions. And can I just give a big shout out to Eva, who's been doing a great job on the comments, answering some of the questions as well. Thank you for that, Eva. So Ellie, right at the beginning, so we're just going to try and do these very quickly and some brief responses. Ellie's a second-year journalism student, creating content on TikTok, often has good ideas about the content she'd like to create, but she's just a bit worried about whether to post it or not, if it might affect her professionally afterwards. Where's the line between what you should and shouldn't post? Sophia, is there a line for you where you think, no, I'm not going to step over that line?
I'm not really sure what you're talking about, and the only thing I could imagine is political bias. Is that what you're talking about?
That may be it. That may be it.
I mean, if that is it, I've made how many TikToks, and I hopefully haven't shown how I think. There's a way to do it, and the best way, I mean, if you just apply, it depends what kind of journalist you want to be as well, because if you're going to become an opinion writer, the way that you construct and sell your opinions is your asset. It's not something that's going to be a professional risk. But obviously, if you're hoping to work for a UK broadcaster that abides by Ofcom guidelines, yes, that is another thing that you should think about. Why not? It's so boring, but why not read the Ofcom guidelines? And then you'll know if you think, could this TikTok get on TV? And think about, oh no, that couldn't get on TV because look at this politician that it sounds like I'm supporting, or look at this policy that I sound like I'm really criticizing, without, data or experts say criticizing it. It's coming from your voice. So I would just Ofcom it. That's what I would do.
Great. Thank you. Laura, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I used to tell my students a kind of opposite question to ask yourself to what Sophia just said. Like, one can be, would this be broadcastable? The other is, would you want to see this on the front page of the Daily Mail? If you wouldn't want to see it on the front page of the Daily Mail about you, then don't put it on social media. People like me know how to find the tweets you've deleted. Don't do it, right? Think of giving yourself as many options as you can by being careful about what you put on social media. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to have a personality and you have to be boring. It's just think, what am I putting out there? Is it going to reflect badly on how I do my job, or limit my options on the kind of jobs that I want to do? And that might be different. Like Sophia says, if you want to be an opinion writer, your voice and how you think about things is going to be really important. If one day you want to get into political journalism, not having a bias to either political party is going to be really important, right? But you have to pick and choose your battles and go from there. Like, I have decided personally, I don't mind if people know that I am pro women's rights, pro like immigrants' rights, and I care about the environment, because those three things have nothing to do with the jobs that I want to do sometime in the future. And I've decided those are spaces where I can have an opinion. You have to make that decision for yourself, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or whatever comes afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Marinette, do you agree that a TikTok video with a face or a host is more effective than, say, a common news report scaled simply to fit the TikTok video size? I'm getting lots of nods there. So yeah, I think we, yes, okay, let's move on. Well done to those of you who say you're having a go, but worried about looking like fools. But hey, you know, I guess TikTok, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, you know, not being afraid to look a little bit foolish sometimes. Eva pointed out that TikTok has country-specific settings and managers, so if your content crosses borders, you can end up being banned for something that might be fine in your own country. But Zara points out you can always appeal the content that's taken down. Emma has asked a question about shadow banning, but Eva did a good job of answering that. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that people are asking. I think maybe the rest might be something that we can answer in our workshop session. So panel, Sophia, Laura, Chris, thank you so much for being with us for this last hour. It's been really, really helpful to us just to get you know, some expert insight into TikTok, for those of us who knew very little about it, for those of us maybe who are further along the pathway with TikTok. We've, you know, all had something there really helpful. So thank you so much. If you're able to join us for the second hour, that's terrific. If not, that's fine too. But let's just, shall we just again, with our emojis, woo, show our appreciation. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Chris. Okay, Laura has very kindly agreed to now lead us in a bit of a workshop for the next hour or so, or 45 minutes, and then we'll try and do a Q&A. Isn't that right, Laura? So I'm just going to stop sharing that placeholder. Laura, if you want to just grab the screen for a moment. And folks, just, you know, keep the questions coming, and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can. Hopefully this is scratching your itches, and hopefully the next hour will scratch even more of those itches. That's great. Thank you, Laura. That's looking nice.
Cool.
So yes, over to you.
Cool. Excellent. Right. But first of all, thank you for the invite. Lovely to be here. Whenever I realize that I get paid to rant about TikTok, I just realize like how, at least for now, I've hit the job jackpot. It's great. It's amazing. I love it.
Living the dream.
Got the chat open. I've got the chat open. So if you've got any questions, type them as we go along, and I'll try and answer them if I kind of feel that we need to answer them right then. And if not, we'll park them towards the end. If you have spent hours on this app and you think you know everything, still stick around, because I'm going to show you some more kind of intermediate and advanced TikTok investigation techniques, especially so how you can use it as a journalist. I'm not really going to talk about the content creation part because it's not my area of expertise. Sophia is the person who you should talk to about that, who's just done incredible, engaging content. But today's session hopefully will give us a bit of an understanding of how we can decode the space, understand the language to find stories, and also do a little bit of investigation. If you haven't opened the app ever in your life, my intro is about 5 minutes. You've got time to download it and then just try some of these things with me. I'm going to share my phone screen and we can look at different things that you can do. You don't need to make an account to even interact with content on the app, and the app is it's made for viewing on a phone. It does have a desktop version, which is actually really shitty and buggy, and you won't really understand how this space works unless you see it on your phone. So come with me, brave adventurers. Let's have a look at some TikTok things. In case you don't know me yet, I'm the training and support manager at First Draft. We're a nonprofit that researches disinformation. So I'm also going to talk about how this space is particularly challenging for false and misleading information. Them's my Twitter and my TikTok. My cat has actually got way more views on me than I do on TikTok. So maybe you should follow her rather than me. And I'm actually going to start with a video by Sophia that we were talking about, right? So I think this has already been shared in the chat, and hopefully I ticked all the right boxes so you can hear a little bit of this.
There once was a ship in the Suez Canal that got even more famous than Paul Mescal. The 400-meter long Ever Given got stuck diagonally. How can one blocked waterway stop 12% of global trade? The alternative route around the Cape of Good Hope takes 4 weeks. 10 tugboats and 2.
So I'm going to pause it for a second. Let's become a little bit more active consumers of this content. Look at all the layers of information that you have there. You have Sophia, her lovely singing voice, the harmonies that come into place, the images that she's using in front of the words or the tags in front that are telling you the lyrics of the song. And there's also the song in and of itself, right? And if you'd approach this TikTok just in the wild, you can enjoy it on many different levels. And that's the power of TikTok. One, maybe you only know about the evergreen ship and you think, oh my God, this lady's really clever and she's written a whole song about it, right? And it fits and it has a beat and it's telling me the story and it's funny. But this has layers of memification, which both Chris and Sophia had already been thinking about. Let me decode this trend for you, if I can get to my next slide. This actually all comes from something that was huge on TikTok earlier this year that started with this one video on the left.
Once was a ship that put to sea. The name of the ship was a billy of tea. The winds blew up her bow, dipped down below, my billy boys blow.
So this is a guy who sings sea shanties. That's what he does. His account is full of sea shanties everywhere. And this one in particular struck a chord because it's a cool song, because pandemic, because of lots of things, and because of a particular feature of the app that lets you duet with someone's content. You interact with someone's content and add a layer of meaning. So very quickly, people started doing mental versions of this song, adding harmony, adding instruments, and even Kermit the Frog.
Put to sea, the name of the ship was a billy of tea. The winds blew up her bow, dipped down below, my billy boys blow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
And you can see how it's nested, right? Can you see this little black and white thumbnail here on the right? That's the original video that I just played for you. And all of these different ones are duets of how it gets nested and remixed and repurposed, right? So if you came across Sophia's original TikTok and you just thought, oh, it's a clever song about a ship, that's one level of understanding. But if you also know the culture of this space, you would have gotten the callback to this song and what it's referencing and how, like she described it, was the perfect space where two memes collided, right? And as journalists, we need to understand these cultural signifiers. It's like learning to read someone's body language when you're doing an interview to get the best out of it, just in a digital space. So, hold on a second, because now this video is never going to shut up. Stop it. Let's go to the next one. And if you needed even more proof, this is a Google Trends screenshot for the past 12 months worldwide. Look at the spike in searches for the phrase sea shanty around the time that this trend went viral. Why should journalists care about TikTok? Because people care about TikTok, and now you have a graph to prove it. So hopefully my hard sell has worked, and now you're going to come on this wild adventure with me. This is the article that I was telling you guys about before, of that lady, not a lady, a guy who went on TikTok for the first time and kind of narrated and chronicled their experience. And this is one of my favorite quotes. TikTok's For You, the page, offers the passivity of linear cable television with the addition of automated, customized variety, and without the need for human editors to curate content or much action from the user to choose it. So you get stuff to you that you're really probably going to like, right? And it's that mix that makes this space so addicting. And it's become a place for community, for culture, for creativity, and like any place where we share information with each other. It's also become a place for disinformation. On the right hand side, you see a screenshot of all the different hashtags that I saw on TikTok around the time when George Floyd was murdered in the States. Look at the amount of both hashtags and the views associated them to this space. People are using this space to share their grief, their thoughts, their joy, their hopes, their fears. Therefore, that's where we've got to be, right? And when it comes to politics, TikTok banned political advertising late in 2019. That doesn't necessarily mean that politics doesn't exist on this app. So you have everything from hype houses. You haven't heard the term hype house before. It's collections of creators, groups of creators who decide to live together so that they can all create content together and publish both as a hype house and as individual content creators. This isn't new. YouTubers did it before. So did like musicians have done it before, but this is the TikTok version. And you have, for example, the Republican hype house, the Marxians, the leftists, the libertarians, everyone's on TikTok, or even stuff that is a little bit more subtle. So this is a video, again, from late 2019 of a girl who was doing a makeup tutorial. She's curling her eyelashes. But while she was curling her eyelashes, she was talking about the Uyghurs in China, which is the Muslim minority people who are not having a great time at the hands of the Chinese government. And that video got taken down. And then it got put back up again due to pressure, and TikTok apologized and all that kind of stuff. But it just kind of shows that just because something doesn't come from a political party doesn't mean it's not political. And that's kind of how you straddle that space between culture and politics is huge. This is another example. Let me play you a little bit of it.
China has 3 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. Did you know that? The women are being raped, their children are being killed. World leaders knew that. Did you know that?
So I won't play the whole of it, but this video is one of many that uses this particular sound. If you listen all the way to the end, the song says, share this and reuse it with your own videos. So the creator of the song composed the song and the lyrics knowing that then people can reuse that sound to multiplicate or amplify the message, right? So there's people doing their makeup or cooking, using that song, and that kind of space between culture and politics becomes really, really creative to exploit and to amplify and to tell different kinds of stories, which again is a problem for content moderation. So for example, we did a bunch of work on Plandemic. Do you guys remember that video that kind of came out like May last year and said that COVID was planned, therefore it's a plandemic, you know, creative use of words. And it got taken down from Facebook, it got taken down from YouTube, but it was everywhere on TikTok because people can get away with circumventing moderation by, instead of posting a video of the video, they post a video of themselves like that, reacting to the screen, or different ways of using the creativity of this space to circumvent moderation. So you had all the conspiracy theories on TikTok. This is from their latest transparency report. TikTok publishes a transparency report every quarter. And like with all transparency reports, we have to take this with a pinch of salt because obviously this is what they want us to know, but it is a cool indicator of how things are happening inside of TikTok. And they say that 51,000 videos were removed for promoting COVID-19 misinformation. The giant figure is for all of the videos that they took down for violating their community guidelines is something like almost less than 1% of the entirety of content uploaded to TikTok. But you can read through the whole report. Around the time of the US elections, for example, they realized that they were going to be pressured to be more transparent because everything was kicking off with Trump and their relationship with China. So they decided to make a concerted public effort to be more transparent. And in the 3 weeks ahead of the US election, they were publishing daily transparency reports on anything that they took down related to election integrity. Now there's elections here in Thursday and they haven't done that for the UK, and there's elections in Mexico in 4 weeks and they haven't done that for Mexico. So it's not like it's a transparency across the board. It was just obviously reacting to specific political pressure. And the other problem, or the other reason why we should understand this space as journalists, is because if we don't understand the culture of the space, we're going to get the story wrong. So on the left-hand side, you see a TikTok account called POC Republicans, so people of color for Trump. And it's just a bunch of kids who are brown and black making content that is satirical of Republicans. They are making fun of Republicans. But someone who doesn't understand how TikTok works and who didn't get the joke actually wrote them up as, here's proof that young people of color really like Trump, because they didn't understand the space, right? So that's yet another reason why we should understand the language of TikTok. Right. So that was all like preface and setting up, getting ready to do some playing around. So there's 4 main differences between TikTok and the other apps. And there are TikTok lookalikes or apps similar to TikTok. So for example, if you heard of Likey or Triller or Dubsmash or Fuminate, they're all kind of very similar, built on vertical frame-by-frame storytelling. Let me have a look. So there's a question in the chat. We usually know about an issue or something that happened before watching it on TikTok. So how do journalists benefit from watching political content on TikTok? What a good question, Elena. I'm gonna park that for a second, but we'll get to that. So there's 4 main differences of TikTok and other apps. The landing page, which is called the For You page. On every other social media platform, not on all of them, but like for example, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram or Facebook, your feed is the content created by the accounts that you choose to follow, right? So on Twitter, I will see stuff by the people that I decide to follow. On TikTok, my For You page is brought to me by the algorithm, and the algorithm learns from what I watch more than once, what I like, what I decide to share out of the app, what I search for, and also what kind of content I create. So that landing page isn't stuff that I have chosen to follow. It's whatever the algorithm thinks I'm going to like, given my previous behavior on this app, right? And that's what's wonderful and also terrible about it, because you can very quickly fall down rabbit holes. And TikTok is built to be shared, which I've already touched upon a little bit, and I'll show you how. It's very quick to send it through WhatsApp or like messages. It's not greedy. If you want to post your TikTok to your Insta story at the same time, it'll let you do it. It has added layers of creativities. And this is an important one when we're monitoring stuff. Hashtags on TikTok can have emojis. So if you're looking at hashtag BLM, also look at hashtag BLM little fist or hashtag BLM happy face or whatever, because all of those can also be part of that conversation. And it builds on this language that we've been talking about already of looped video from Vine, and then Instagram stories really popularized kind of like vertical frame-by-frame storytelling. Snapchat introduced cool AR filters that we're all now super used to using, and kind of TikTok is starting to bring all of those together. But again, they're not the only ones. And you already see all these replicas in Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, which are trying to kind of capitalize on that same way of telling stories. And here's all the tools at your disposal. So for storytelling, you have the images in the video, the music or the sound that you can use, the text that you put on the video, any of the effects or the filters that you can use, the description that you post your video with, and the hashtags that you put in that description. And then there's 2 options to interact with other people's content. The first one is Duet, which we've already seen, is how they did that kind of nested singing video. And then the second one's called Stitch, where you can grab another person's TikTok and kind of use the first 10 or 15 seconds or however much you want, and then add your response to it. And that is different to just downloading their video and editing it, because it keeps the link. So it says Laura has Stitch with Sophia, and then I can go and trace back the chain of interaction, which is important, right? And there's a guy called Josh Constein who described why TikTok is perfect in 2 words: content density. So it's the entertainment value of a piece of content divided by its length. So how many like oohs or ahs or laughters you get per second. And if you think about TikTok, it's kind of micro entertainment, right? It's micro stories told in 15 seconds or 60 seconds. And just to show you a couple of other examples and how they can have layers of meaning and how we can dissect a trend and how we can do it as journalists. Let's start easy with the cat videos because I like cats. So there's two ways to understand this video, right? One is key video of a cat where the timing of the music to his ear flopping out is perfect. The other one is some of us are old enough to remember that sound, and it's when Windows computers turn on, isn't it? Or they're turn off? Someone who's around my age, please correct me. So that has layers, right? I can share that with my niece who's 18, and she's probably not going to get the sound reference, but she'll like it because the timing of the sound and the cat is funny. But people my age and older will totally also get the reference and go, oh my God, remember that when we all had computers that would take ages to turn on? Eva saying when it would turn on, perfect. Here's another one. Song reference, right? You can enjoy that just because it's a random piece of content of some dudes dressed as chickens or because you know the song, right? And all of those layers of creativity are valid. How can we use this, or how can people use this to say things that are newsworthy, right? Let's dissect another trend. So here on the left-hand side, this was huge, maybe early last year. And the trend is the song, the jump, and what they're doing, right? So the trend was 3 parts. You use that song specifically to show off what you would wear if you were characters in different kinds of TV shows. And if mostly it was an excuse for like people to dress up, right? Because why not? We have nothing else to do. But you can take it even one step further. I'm a pretty boy, I'm stunning. Super speed Sonic, I'm running. Super speed Sonic. Or even one step further. And they disappear because there aren't any Asian characters in any of these TV shows. So a very innocuous trend that you can say it's super shallow, it's just people dressing up, it's just full fun and games, can then be used really effectively to make a point about lack of diversity in television, right? Here's one of my favorite TikTok trends, and it's one of the weirdest one ever, and it started with this video on the left. Now, don't ask me to explain this because I don't think I can. The song comes from a cereal advert in Russian. It's singing something along the lines of like Honey Pops. And then someone created this dancing llama and it went everywhere on TikTok and it became a thing, right? And again, layers of creativity and how it gets memified and repurposed. Here's what some people did with it. Oh, hold on a second. Come on, internet.
Me buns, zoo, 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 zoo.
Same song, 4 people duetting. Mental, isn't it? Add a layer of politics to it. So if you know that people are searching for that song because it's trendy, because it's hot, because people like it and they understand what's going on. Definitely political, right? Would you have known until you watch the first frame of the video? Probably not. And the description, if I remember correctly, had nothing to do with politics. So as journalists, unless you know how this space works, we can't find these stories, which are important, right? One last one, and then I'll show you the app. This is from Dave Jorgensen at the Washington Post, who is an absolute genius at this stuff.
When I see you again, we've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again. Damn, who knew?
So it's obviously using a song that was trending at the time to actually tell us something really important to the history of this legacy media newspaper, right? And I know at least a couple of my former students, that got me started on a conversation about Watergate and Deep Throat. And it gave us a place to start digging together, right? And it immediately tells you a little micro story that gives you more places to start to go and digging. And sometimes these trends aren't obvious at all. So for example, last year, when it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's birthday, she is a Democrat politician in the United States. Young women took a sound of her talking and did makeup tutorials and art to celebrate her birthday. And it was loads. I got the screenshot very early on when it started. By the end, it was like thousands and thousands of videos of young women using this trend to say happy birthday to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and build community, right? And if you've heard of hashtag squatting before, or keyword squatting, which is when someone dominates the content that comes up when you search for a specific phrase, you can do the same on TikTok. I've called it sound squatting, so I'm going to claim the name for it. But it's when someone takes a song that was intended for one specific purpose and then floods it with content that has no relation to that. So before the election, this song, Trump is Your President, started to trend on TikTok, used in very pro-Republican, pro-Trump videos, and the whole lyrics are like, Trump should be our next president again, 4 more years, all that kind of stuff. K-pop fans, who are great at coordinating internet shenanigans, got coordinated and flooded this song. Hold on a second, I need to pick up my cat because she's hysterical. And flooded this song with K-pop content. If you see it there at the bottom, right, the video in the middle and the one on the middle at the bottom and then on the right hand side, it's all K-pop fan cams. That's what I meant. So if you looked at the song, maybe 75% of the content created with that song was K-pop, and it'd been squatted on by K-pop fans. Yeah, I know, Becky. I've just learned it's easier to pick her up and then she'll just like calm down. Go away, cat. That's Anya, by the way. At Princess Catface on TikTok, if anyone's interested. One of her videos has got 45,000 views. Very, very nice. Mine don't break 100. Right. So let's do a little. I'm just going to show you on the app rather than on my slides. And while I'm doing that, let me have a look really quickly at questions. So we're going to talk about politics at the end. Do you think hashtags are actually needed? Very often videos with no hashtags, no captions reach more people. Why and how do you think that happens? That's a good question, Ellie. I don't know. The inner workings of the algorithm and what hits and what doesn't is really obscure to me. And I think to everybody, hashtags sometimes are good, sometimes they're not. They're useful if you think that your audience is going to be using hashtags to search for the content that you are creating. They might be more useful at the beginning while you establish your audience and while kind of the algorithm figures out what your things are. So for example, Sophia was talking, hers are languages and news and things that speak to young women, right? And it must have taken some time for the level and the volume of the content that she was creating to kind of dictate those patterns to the algorithm. And I guess that's where hashtags can come into play. But I'm sure she can answer that question way better than I just have at the end. Erica is commenting on hashtags. Yeah, kind of the same thing. Right. Let's look at some TikTok things. And beware, my friends, we are looking live on my phone. So if some of the content that comes up is not particularly kosher on TikTok, I blame my For You page. So,
welcome to Phrases I Say to My Kids.
This is the landing page. This is the For You page. All of the content here has been chosen for me by the algorithm, and you interact with it. And if you're one of those people who's never been on TikTok before, now's the time to open the app and follow along with me. You can scroll past by swiping up and play the next video. This is, for example, someone being live at Satan BBC. Not sure we want to stay here. And I'll alpaca video. This is great. So look at all the information that we have on the screen here, right? This is the handle of the user that created this video. This is their profile picture. See how it has a little plus sign? If I click on it, it automatically subscribes me to their account. So it's very easy for me to follow people that I like if I want to. You have a description here with all of the hashtags. This down here is the song this video is using. And this is how you can interact with it by liking it, by commenting it, or by sharing. A couple things to think about. If I click share, look at all of the places it's asking me, it's giving me the option to send to. Copy link to Twitter, to WhatsApp, to message, to all these other spaces if I want to. I can also say I'm not interested. This is a question I get all the time. Like, what if I don't? You can tell the algorithm what you like by watching stuff. How do you tell them you don't like something? You click this little button. I can add it to my favorites. See this little bookmarky button here, which is important because then it saves it so I can go back and rewatch it later or keep track of it. If we're talking about how do you monitor in the most strategic way as a journalist, that's an important one. And you can also download it. This particular user has made this video unavailable to download, but a lot of them are just easy and you save them to your phone, which speaks again to how easy it is to grab something from TikTok, download and repost somewhere else, right? If I click on this little disc, right, which is telling me what song is being used in this video, it's going to take me to the page for that song or that sound. And it's going to show me any other videos that have been created with that particular song. So if we're talking about how do we monitor these trends as journalists, sometimes a good place to look at are what songs are people using and then add to favorites here. And then now it's easier for you to go back and visit it and track how people are creating content to this particular sound, right? You can also share it. You can look at the sharing button up here. So you can share the particular song with people or with colleagues. And if we click through to someone's profile, you get their name, the username, following, follower, likes. I think either Chris or Sophia made this point that it's very meritocratic. So if you make good content, even if you have 3 followers, you can get millions of views in a way. So look at, for example, if I scroll down, that one that we just watched has 80,000 views for an account that has 963 followers. And it's just lots of wholesome alpaca content. You have here their Instagram account, which again speaks to that content creator economy that Sophia was talking about. A lot of people use it to put their Venmo accounts to make money, or PayPal, or their Etsy shop, or all sorts of stuff like that. And if I click on the little down arrow here, it gives me recommendations of accounts that are A, similar to that, and B, based on my previous kind of experience of the app, right? So that's kind of how the For You page works. To see the content from the accounts that I follow, you need to go over here to where it says following at the top. Can you guys see that? So if I click following, this feed.
3 things to know about the French pronoun E. Number 1, it refers to a location.
I'm learning French, so I follow a lot of like French, teaching French TikTok things. So this space now is just different from the For You page, which is catered for me. Right?
I said to my son,
oh, this guy's great.
What's Yoda's best advice for going to the bathroom? He said, don't force it. I said, no, dummy.
Do or do not. There is no in between.
I said to my son,
he just does terrible dad jokes. Oh, good question about musical copyright. So TikTok has different licensing contracts with different companies in different parts of the world. So not all the music is available to use on TikTok. And so if we go to the creator button, scary times, that's my face. Let me flip the camera around so you see my cat. There she is. Hi, cat. If you come to, I always forget where the music bit is after you film something. So let's film 3 seconds of my cat just doing nothing. You can then start to add layers of sound in the effects. And it has here, it says at the top, can you guys see where it says add sound really lightly? So if I go to add sound, if it lets me click it. When I click it, hold on a second, let's start over. There we go. It shows all of the library that is available to me because of my position. It takes the geo position of my phone, right? So for example, a lot of the Beatles sounds are not on TikTok because there isn't a copyright deal with those particular companies. These get renegotiated all the time. And sometimes, for example, you'll make a TikTok with a song that was allowed 6 months ago, and then suddenly your TikTok has no sounds because that licensing agreement has kind of expired, right? But music companies have also realized that TikTok is a really good place to start launching their artist careers. So sometimes the first place where they will premiere a song is on TikTok. If you've heard Dua Lipa's, what is that song called? I also just totally typed Duet Lipa into my phone because I'm that old. When it comes to sounds, this song. You guys heard this? So this, not to say that this song wouldn't have been a hit otherwise, but it got debuted and promoted first on TikTok and then spread everywhere else, right? This gives me a chance to show you guys the Discover page. So if I come here, I think my phone is being a little bit slow in connecting to Zoom. Let me re-hook it up again. Stop it. Did I answer your question about TikTok licenses? Yeah, and business accounts have different options as well. Video copyright is a really tricky one, Carla, because it depends, and sometimes it'll take clips. Like there's clips of friends that live on TikTok that are fine, but some other bits get taken down. Again, that part of it is a little bit less clear to me, and maybe Chris and Sophia can give us some insight. But the mere fact that you can stitch someone's content already removes that layer of IP protection, because I can take the first 10 really funny seconds of someone TikTok and then reuse it in my own account, and I'm not breaking the rules, right? The app is meant like that. So if you come to the Discover page, which is down here, can you guys see that? I can type in whatever. So for example, I was looking up Sophia to show you the evergreen example. And you have different options here at the top. Top, users, videos, sounds, hashtags. Now, because here we search for a specific person, this isn't really going to be a good example. So let me search for something else. Let's search for vaccines. Why not? Let's go into the Wild West. So this top section, where I am now, because you can see it's highlighted in darker black, is kind of curated by TikTok, by the algorithm, things that are trending, things that it thinks it wants me to see. For now, TikTok's also trying to promote like good information about vaccines. So these sometimes tend to be from the World Health Organization and accounts like that. However, we come to users. It's going to show me any user that has the word vaccines either in their handle or in their description. So now we're starting to get into kind of like the Wild West. Then videos shows me any videos that use those words. And again, TikTok prioritizes stuff, particularly about COVID and vaccines, about stuff that comes from doctors and some of their partners. But if you scroll further enough down, you will find literally everybody else's content. It's important to note that this isn't ranked chronologically. So some of these videos are going to be older than others, and you can see that they have their date stamp here on it. But again, everything, that's one of the hardest things about TikTok as a journalist, is that everything that it shows you is catered to you through the algorithm. I can come to sounds, and it shows me any sounds that have that word. So not sounds that are associated to the topic, but sounds that have that word in the title, whether it's a song or a sound. Same for hashtags, right? And here you go. Oh, Chris has given us a really good answer about clips of television. Thank you, Chris. One last thing, and then I'll show you some like advanced tips, and then we'll leave time for questions. So if I go to my profile, this is my cat. Follow her on TikTok. She is great. See this little bookmarky icon? That is where all of my saved videos and searches are going to live. So as a journalist, this is hugely important. Let me actually switch over to my journalist account. And I have two for two reasons. One, I started experimenting with TikTok when I wasn't sure whether it was a space for me. So I thought I'd just use my cat as an experiment because she is my cat and can't tell me otherwise. And the other one is because when I actually started doing research on disinformation on TikTok, the algorithm started to change very quickly, and I lost my TikTok happy space. So I decided to make myself a journalist account that I could use to research and to follow politics and disinformation and conversations about vaccines, and then keep my cat's account as my happy TikTok place, right? But if you come to Bridgerton, her just follow her, she's great, says the lady who does her account. If you come to the bookmarks, these are all the videos that I have saved that I believe are relevant, and they stay there just like your Twitter bookmarks. So some of them are like cool examples of journalism, cool examples of people doing kind of vaccine misinfo answering. There's Kermit Sea Chanty. See all the ones that are not there anymore. It's because it's cool examples of disinfo that I found that I've also obviously now been taking down. My saved hashtags of things that I am following. So for example, I was helping a colleague look into Resign Modi in India and how people are using TikTok to connect with Indian diasporas outside of India. Or we did a bit of research into the Romanian presidential elections, which was well fun. The sounds that I've saved as well, the effects that I've saved, because these are important. Sometimes these become the way that trends evolve. And then I have a product section because I've actually changed this to a creator account. So I can get metrics on my videos, which is really useful. Not that lots of people see my videos, but if they did, it gives me insights into their demographics, a little bit like Facebook and Instagram advertising does. Oh, that was a lot of talking. I think I've got all the questions in the chat. Let me show you the kind of 3 top takes really quickly of digital investigations, and then we'll leave the rest for questions. Hold on a second. We've already took that. Right. So, things that you can monitor on TikTok. Users' accounts that you can follow. Hashtag searches, like I just showed you. And remember, hashtags can have emojis. Trends, whether they're driven by visuals or effects. And the music and the sound that people are using, which can become an important part of the story, right? If you want to look at any of this content on your computer, there's a distinct difference between TikTok and other platforms in that you have to include the @ in someone's handle. So on Twitter, for example, it's just tiktok.com/LauraGRB. On TikTok, it's tiktok.com/@ and then my handle. Otherwise, it won't show up. Keep that in mind. The other is that there's 2 ways to see content. And if you want to do a little bit more of OSINT, which means open source intelligence investigations into TikTok, you need to open the page that's specific per that video that you want to investigate, right? If you just open it on your desktop and then you click on it, it creates like a pop-up, but you're still in the main landing page of that account. So if you want to do some more digging, and there's videos that we have at First Draft showing you how to look into the code of TikTok, you have to click on this little link. Can you guys see it here on the right? Copy that, open it in a separate bookmark, and then that'll open the page that's specific for that video. That'll let you do a little bit more investigation. And that is a crucial part if you're digging into TikTok. The way the URLs are displayed can also sometimes give you information about how it's traveled. So anything that just says tiktok.com is a generic TikTok URL. If you see anything that says vm.tiktok at the beginning, it's because it's been shared through closed messaging apps. When you're on TikTok and it says, do you want to send it via WhatsApp or via Facebook Messenger? Why is this important? Because as journalists, tracking how information or disinformation spreads can tell us a lot about that piece of content and the networks that spread it, and can be a really important part of the story. And you can tell a lot just by the beginning of the URL. So if it has VM at the beginning, it came through someone sharing it from the app through closed messaging apps. Now, this is the fanciest trick ever. And if you learn how to master Boolean search queries, they will really change the kind of content that you see on TikTok. This is again from the monitoring perspective, not from the content creation perspective. So as we've already seen, if I type a search question or a word into TikTok, all of the results are organized by whatever the algorithm thinks I'm going to like. We can circumvent that using Boolean search queries and site searches on Google. Hear me out. Boolean search queries are a way of using command operators. It's a little bit like computer programming to really specifically tell Google what you're looking for. And you have to use these command operators all in caps. And then for our international audience, you can search with words in whatever language you want, but the command operators have to be in English. Okay, so for example, the first one on the left, and, all in caps, it limits your results. If I type UK and politics into Google, what I'm forcing it is to show me content that includes the words UK and politics. If I just type UK politics, Google's going to give me results that have just UK, just politics, UK politics, related searches, all that kind of stuff, right? This is how I control what I see. Or expands your results. The one in the middle shows me content that has the words UK or politics, right? And then the minus sign or not excludes things from my results. So I want to see things that have the word UK minus everything that mentions politics. And careful, we're not talking about the content, we're talking about the words around it, right? So if we're talking about TikTok, we're talking of the description, of the hashtags, and even of the tags used in the video, because those get read into the code and the metadata of each video. You can combine these with a site search. So if you type site, all in lowercase, otherwise it's not going to work, site:tiktok.com, what you're asking Google is to look just within this URL. And then you can write a Boolean search query. This and actually shouldn't be here. So let's pretend, hi cat, you need to be picked up again. Hold on a second. So this and shouldn't be here. So this Boolean search query is looking within TikTok for anything that has one of the first group of words about geography and one of the second group of words that talks about elections, right? So UK or Scotland or Wales or London, and elections or vote or voting or elects or go vote, because we have elections on Thursday, which is tomorrow. Weird time, right? So that would help you see content that matches those results. And then once you get your Google results, you can tell it, just show me stuff from the last 7 days, or just show me stuff in Arabic, or just show me stuff in English or whatever. And it really changes what you can surface versus what you would get by just typing a question or just typing a word into the app, because this isn't mandated by the algorithm, right? Another trick, you can do a minus site search to see any content that has a TikTok URL, but that is being shared outside of TikTok. So we already talked about this. One of the most important things of the app is that it just goes wild and it gets shared on Facebook and Instagram and anything. So here I'm saying, look for tiktok.com, so it's the URL, and any of the words that we already decided about the election, minus site:tiktok.com. So look for anything that fits these parameters, but outside of TikTok, but that includes the URL tiktok.com. See how I'm getting at? And then you're going to see this crop up, TikTok content on Reddit, on Facebook, on Instagram. Now, for the record, these site searches work for any site that you want to search on. So if you want to know, for example, what people are saying on Clubhouse about a specific topic, you can't actually access the conversations because Clubhouse has like a membership service, but the public facing part of it lists all the events. So you could do site:joinclubhouse.com, which is a URL for Clubhouse, and whatever you want to search for to see what conversations people are having on this space, or Reddit, or Facebook groups, or whatever. Site searches are wildly useful. I use them as well. I worked as a political reporter in Kent for a little while, and I would use it with my local, with the webpage for the local authority, because their website was awful. It would take me ages to find their budget spreadsheets, but if I did site:medway.gov.uk budget or forecast, then it would surface the budgets really quickly and save me from searching stuff. Real quick on verification. Obviously, just because something is on the internet doesn't mean it's true. This speaks to the work that we do at First Draft, and have these 5 pillars as the drivers for your investigation. Provenance, are you looking at the original source, who sent it to you, or if you can find the first poster, what do you know about them? Independently verified data and location, and also try and think about the motivation of why people are trying to sell you this story, right? And it's super important of finding the original, because that can help you trace how a story has been shared. And you can see, for example, from the screenshot on the right really quickly, that video on Twitter, it looks like it's gone through these layers of mimification, right? It doesn't fit the right format for Twitter. It has some words in Arabic, it's being shared in English, and it's already giving me kind of spidey senses that it's gone through a sharing process, and then I might learn a lot of things by just digging into it. And always remember that you have lots of information on someone's profile to verify. You can reverse image search their profile photo, look at if they have accounts with the same name on other platforms. What does that link take you to? If they're linking to their Instagram account or their PayPal or their Venmo or their Etsy shop, all that kind of stuff. We can do the same kind of verification checks on TikTok that we can anywhere else. And to prove my point, really quick example, and then I'm done. So this is from last October when Trump was in the hospital with coronavirus. Oh, come on, computer. So the song says Donald Trump is your president. And it's a bunch of people with placards screaming 4 more years. And it's a rectangle video in a vertical video platform, Spidey senses, maybe it's not the original. And it says, what the media will not show you. This is outside Walter Reed Hospital, right? Like saying there's huge crowds outside supporting the president while he's in hospital, but the mainstream media will not show you because we're all evil. If you do a little bit of digging, you can see where it's like the bits around it. So this is the song that it's using. That's how it was posted. This is the account. The account doesn't really give us a bunch of information to kind of dig into. Like Texan mom of 3 daughters could be one of a billion people. And that profile photo doesn't really give us a lot to go on either. However, if you're an obsessive person like I am, you could download the video and watch it loads to try and find some clues. So I downloaded the video, watched it a bunch of times, looked for clues, and thought, how can I verify whether these people are actually outside the hospital, right? And my first thought was, well, I can go to Google Maps and just walk around on Street View and see if the buildings match with anything outside the hospital. But in my obsessive watching of this video, I realized that one of these people had a little placard that says Nicole Maliotakis. Can you guys see that? So I was already kind of sure that it was from last year rather than from 2016 because they're shouting 4 more years rather than just Trump. And then I thought, well, if this person has a placard, that means that person is running for office. So I looked up Nicole Maliotakis, and she was running for the US as a congresswoman in the States. And that video was actually from a rally that she had held the day before. So was it a crowd of Trump supporters? Yes. Were they sending best wishes to President Trump? Yes. Was it outside the hospital where Trump was? 100% no, right? And you can do these same checks whether you're on TikTok or anywhere else. Just ended my spiel. Tools for you to think of. There's a really cool website called Not For You, where once you log on to TikTok, you turn it on purpose. It confuses the algorithm for you. So it watches a bunch of random things on your account to show you what your For You page might look like if you were a completely different person. It will totally change your algorithm. So if you have a happy TikTok space like I do, maybe do it with your like serious work account, because it'll take you time to undo the work that it's done. I think I've already shared this list in the chat, but a guy called Francesco Safarano got on the TikTok bus very early on and started crowdsourcing a list of media outlets and journalists on TikTok, which is a good way to get inspiration and look at what other people are doing. You can find it on that bit.ly. It's a collaborative crowdsourced list. So you can submit examples of your colleagues or yourself or people you are seeing in your part of the world. For now, it's very like Europe centric, but it's a growing list and it's a good resource. There's also a company called Digital Diplomacy, which teaches social media to like NGOs and politicians, and they keep a spreadsheet tracking politicians, institutions, international NGOs, heads of government and state from all over the world as they join TikTok. So it's a good one to keep track of as well. If A, you want to see what people are doing, and B, as a journalist, right, to see what politicians are on there. There's like Macron is on it, and I can't remember what his name is, but like a really, really, really old French politician is on it, but finding new audiences because he just does funny dances on TikTok. So you can keep track of them there. I've already plugged Marcus's newsletter, which is amazing, really good stuff. Just digest trends as he sees them from all over the world. And then I have a Twitter list that you can access either on my Twitter or if you scan this code with your phone, of journalists who write about internet culture. People like Chris. Chris is on it. So if you don't have to want to be like following what's up and what's new, just see what these guys are writing about. And then you'll be in the know of not just TikTok, but new and emerging spaces and platforms. There's a lot of talking, and I actually don't think I left that much time. I'm really sorry, but hopefully that was useful.
Wow, fantastic, Laura. What a terrific presentation with cats and explosions and all kinds of things. Alpacas. Wow, thank you so much. We'll give Laura a chance just to catch her breath. We'll go to the questions, and hopefully Chris is there. I'm not sure if Sophia is still there. If you want to just unmute yourself, Sophia, for a moment. But Becky had a question. How often should we post to TikTok? Are there any tips to build up a following without selling out as an influencer? Chris, do you want to, let's give Laura a bit of a break. Chris, any tips on how to build a following on TikTok? Oh, sorry.
You've muted him.
I didn't mean to. Try that, Chris. Click, click, click.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry. It's because I had to leave for a second and came back, so I ruined it. In terms of how frequently you post, Eva kind of answered it a little bit in terms of don't get yourself into a huge trap of posting all the time. TikTok, I advise businesses in slide decks that I've seen in presentations to adopt a kind of what they call a flicker, flash, flare strategy, which is they encourage you to do low quality, low effort content frequently. That builds on trends. So that is kind of high frequency reactive stuff. That's the flicker bit. It's kind of easy. Then they encourage you to do flash stuff, which is more episodic content that you are developing. So it could be a new vertical or an idea for a theme that is a little bit more difficult to think of, requires a little bit more effort, but you don't need to do as much of it. And then there is the flare stuff, which is kind of like, I guess, Sophia's Tanker song, which is kind of much more interactive, much more high effort, much more professional and polished type stuff. So my abiding bit of advice with all of this stuff is if you get enough online creators in a single space, they will talk until the ends of the world about their pet theories on the algorithm and how to game the algorithm. All of them are bullshit. Don't listen to them. They don't know. Okay, nobody really knows. TikTok don't even really know themselves. So just look at what works for you. If it doesn't work, change something and then keep trying.
Thank you, Chris. So good content essentially will always rise to the top, I guess, whatever platform we're talking about. Sophia, I mean, you've got more followers than the rest of us all put together, most likely. Any advice on just building our following, our numbers?
Depends what you want to get out of TikTok. Is it following that you want to build, or is it engagement? There are some quite high follower accounts that don't have great engagement. And Chris is right that any strategy you choose to develop, there will always be a video that should do well that doesn't, and a video that took you 2 seconds to come up with and shoot, and it does huge numbers. Even the flare content of my sea shanty took 2 hours from ideation to doing it to publishing. It was 2 hours. So there are plenty of videos that take way longer than that. And in fact, that most of the time that I spend more time on videos, often the worse they'll perform. It's just sod's law. But I would not recommend posting more than twice a day if you're there thinking, I want huge view counts on my videos. However, if you've already got a decently engaged following, that your super fans will see all those videos. And if you're focused on catering to them and hearing from them, then they just want content. So it really depends on what you want your strategy to be. My caveat to all of this is just because someone has big followers, a large amount of followers, doesn't mean that their videos get seen loads. I have nearly 250,000 followers, but my average view count for my videos is really, really wildly random. Some struggle to get to 10K, some easily hit 600K. It's just completely random.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. Laura, we ought to go back to Elena's question about politics, and I think Elena was saying, well, to be honest, we see political stories, elsewhere before we see them being covered in TikTok. So why should we bother paying attention to how TikTok is covering it? What's your thoughts on that, Laura?
But we have to remember that narratives surface and bubble in different ways before they get to places which are kind of outward public facing social media where we can see them, and that sometimes we as journalists are the target of these narratives. They're trying to get us to see them. They're trying to get us to report on these narratives because they want the amplification that being written up in the BBC or CNN or wherever brings you. And the more that you can watch these spaces to see how they bubble up, the more that you can make an informed decision on when and how to cover them, and also sometimes to warn you of things coming. So I was part of the team at First Draft looking at TikTok the night before the election, then the day of the election in the States, and the day after. And some of the more problematic narratives of the day, for example, there were rumors of if you'd voted with a Sharpie marker or not, whether that invalidated your vote and whether that was evidence of electoral fraud. I saw them on TikTok before some of my colleagues saw them on Twitter, and it gave us a heads up. You also have this new class of political punditry being delivered straight to people on TikTok live. Like I was watching accounts of Republican and Democrat leaning people just delivering results live commentary. Like you would watch CNN and some people would tune in and they use the green screen effect to show you a map and it looks really official, and they were broadcasting live throughout the night. And that's the kind of content that then eventually shapes people's behavior and attitudes that then impacts the work that we do, right? Again, it's that line between culture and politics, and how we forget that social media has given us and democratized the possibility to broadcast, but that's what you're doing. And even more so on TikTok, right? So if you have more than, is it 10,000 followers that lets you go live? And then you can broadcast to those people, and anybody who is like them, because the For You page will put it in front of more eyeballs, right? And then those kind of all of those things together makes it important for us to know how to navigate these spaces.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Laura. And sorry, it was just one final question, which was from, let me just see if I can find it again. Louisa says, any idea how accounts get verified by TikTok? Laura, Chris, anyone? Chris, have I got to unmute you again?
You've muted him again.
I'm not doing it.
I am being shadow banned by you. It's like joining security services in that you'll get a tap on the shoulder. There is a form which I FOI'd for through a various weird way that I could access it. So I can show you the form, but I can't tell you where to send it to, basically. But basically, they'll get in touch with you. If you're an institution, then you can get in touch with TikTok more generally. It'll get filtered through. Then they will have a dedicated creator contact who will decide whether or not you're worth verifying. And if you are, then yes. But it's kind of, you get to a certain size and then, like Sophia, you get verified, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, thank you. Well, folks, and thank you, Eva. Eva's dropped a couple of answers into the chat there as well. So I've also seen it's an option to apply for it in your profile. Cool, thank you, Eva. Oh, Laura, thank you again for your presentation. Chris, Sophia, thank you for sticking around and just helping with those questions again. Audience, thank you for being with us right to the very end, and thank you for engaging with the speakers, for your great questions, for the conversation that was going on in the chat box. That just really helps us make this a far more engaging session for everyone.